Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about something called the particular examen, or it's like a specific examination of conscience. And it's similar to an examination of conscience, but the purpose of it is that you will knock out your predominant fault, your bad habits, your vices, if you follow it exactly like the instructions. And just to give a little bit of a backstory, I first heard about this 5 to 10 years ago. I heard a talk on sensus fidelium back when I first discovered the channel, and I was already blown away by it. Was like a series of talks that one of the priests gave, and he talked about this particular examination and how you can use it to root out your predominant fault, those vices and sins that you fall into again and again, and that you're just confessing all the time. And the other day I was listening to a talk by Father Ripperger, and it was a really good one, and I'll link it down below. But I think it's a talk that we should listen to every year, because in that talk he asks a series of questions that really are a good gauge of how we're doing, like more on a year-to-year basis over time. Have we made progress on those sins that we keep falling into? Have we made progress in this area and that area? And so I highly recommend listening to that talk. And then really, once we identify the biggest sins and hurdles in our spiritual life, then what we do is we follow the particular examination method, and that is going to help us really just knock out and finally make progress on those long-standing bad habits and habitual sin. And so today I just wanted to briefly summarize it for you, and hopefully it'll be helpful and a starting point. And then I'll also link down below that specific talk that just tells you step by step how to put this into practice. So the overall gist of the particular examination, or the particular examen, is first you identify, you can call it that, the predominant fault, or really, because sometimes, we can get bogged down on like, oh, but what is the predominant fault? Believe me, I have done that then I just keep wondering what's the predominant fault. And you know what, like if you just choose the one that you fall into the most, and it's like the most serious, I think that is a good starting point. And even if that's not the predominant fault, soon enough, then you will start noticing, oh yeah, this is even worse. I got to work on that. So what you do, that's step one, identify that fault or vice that you're going to work on, so that then the next step is that you're going to make a specific resolution. And so the resolution is basically like you're going to make a prayer. So first, in that prayer, we say, my God, I love you. And to prove that I love you every time, and then you choose the time or situation that usually you fall into that sin. So for example, in the talk, Father says, if the fault is anger, and specifically towards your neighbor, then you say a prayer every time you see that neighbor, like it's a mental prayer. And during the temptation, the entire temptation, you just keep saying the prayer to yourself. So for example, Father said, every time you see that neighbor, that temptation that kicks in, that, oh, it's going to be an occasion of sin, of anger, then you keep praying, Lord, please make him happy in this life and in the next. Lord, make him happy in this life and in the next. All throughout the time that you're being tempted towards anger. And that's kind of like the initial plan. Okay, so step 1 and 2, it's identify the fault. And then step 2 is come up with a prayer. Okay, but that's just kind of like the starting point. Now, to really carry it out, there's basically 4 parts. So let me briefly summarize what are the 4 parts, and then we'll break it down a little bit more. So first in the morning, you're gonna say a prayer and resolve to work on this throughout the day. And then what you do is you do an examination of conscience specifically for that sin, and that is paired with lunch, dinner, and right before bed, like your evening examination of conscience. And so that's why I say it's 4 parts, because it's 3 examinations of conscience and that initial resolution in the morning to work on this. So again, let's start from the beginning. So right when you wake up, then you say that prayer that you came up with, that resolution. My God, I love you, and to prove that I love you today, every time, and then the time and place or the temptation, every time I see my neighbor, or Father gave the example of kids if they struggle with obedience. Every time your mom asks you to do something, then the kids could say the mental prayer, Lord help me, Lord help me, Lord help me, until the temptation passes. So every time you see that neighbor, Lord, make him happy in this life, in the next, and you just say it during the temptation. And that will certainly keep you quiet and just keep it in check. That then, like, you're asking for God's help, and that's going to help curb your normal reaction and your normal, how would you say that? The normal way that you would just typically fall into that bad habit, that fault, that sin. So that resolution in the morning, and then at lunch, you're going to do an examination of conscience, but it's going to be very specific just for that anger. So before you do that examination of conscience, very simple, you just say a little quick prayer. Lord, help me, please give me the grace to do a good examination of conscience. And then you just ask yourself, did I fall into anger? Did I act on it? Did I do anything sinful? If you did not fall into the sin, then you thank God. If you did fall into it, well, you say sorry, and then you recommit and resolve again to keep carrying out this resolution. And then so you do the same thing at dinner, that quick prayer for God's grace to do a good examination of conscience, and then simply ask yourself, did I fall into it again? And then one more time right before bed. And so it's like so simple. And the thing is, if you don't really put it fully into practice, then it is not as effective. So I highly recommend, and Father also suggested that you make sure to write this down. So you write down the specific prayer and resolution that you're making so that you're committing on paper to do this. Because, we kind of like think, oh, that's a good idea, and I'm going to give that a try, but then we don't carry it out. And then soon enough, it has been, weeks, months, years, and we haven't made progress. And we all want to grow closer to God, grow in holiness and virtue, be a better mom, a better wife, just be a better person in general, be more pleasing to God in our behavior and in our actions, in our thoughts and in our words. So I highly recommend trying out the particular examination, learning more about it, listening to the talks by Father Ripperger and the other one on sensus fidelium. Well, both of these talks are on sensus fidelium, but that will just really help to really knock out these habitual sins. And Lent would be a perfect time to really commit to just doing this particular examination. And so here's a brief overview again. Identify the fault. You make a particular resolution. You identify the situation, time, place, occasion of sin, of the circumstances of when you fall into that. And then you write down that action plan, that prayer. And then so you're ready for every morning. My God, I love you, and to prove that I love you, I resolve today, every time I'm tempted to be disrespectful to my husband, you can say a prayer, and during that temptation, you keep repeating the prayer mentally, not out loud, mentally, and you will soon see that the temptation passes, that you start being more aware, and you don't let your emotions drive your behavior, your words and actions, because a lot of times this is all of a sudden we'll just say something or do something. And this is our way of preventing that, of, putting on the brakes so that we can have a different reaction. And Father recommends teaching this method to our children so that they know from a young age how to really make progress on those things that they keep falling into. And then again, after you say that initial prayer, then lunch, dinner, and then before bed, you just make this very specific examination of conscience. And it makes such a difference, because if we're just like waiting right before bed and just saying like, oh yeah, I fell into this and I should have done that and I could have been like, usually it's not too specific, and we like vaguely think about it. But if we're being held much more accountable to ourselves and asking for God's grace to help us be more aware and vigilant, you can see why that would be much more effective. And by God's grace, it would just really have a big impact on finally bringing to an end those sins that we're just more prone to committing. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this helpful. Let me know down in the comments below, because for me, I just thought that this is so amazing and so helpful. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up, because this channel is still growing, and whenever the algorithm sees that people like the video, it starts sending it out to more people. And thank you so much for watching. God bless you.